Mute, share, and you should be back on the road. All right, so there you are, and back to your full screen view. Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yes, so anyway, so like I said, so again, source countries for those exploits, it was Ukraine and China, I think. A couple of them, well, Germany, those were something a little different. I got this thing to stop. That was different. That was a PHP mailer remote cold type of vulnerability. In case, the firewall does its thing, but it's not something you just set and walk away from. As much as the vendor says that, and I specifically asked their CTO, said, "Oh, that's our objective," but it's still there's constant updates that you need to do on the firewall. You have to kind of look through traffic. Bad guys and VPs, we block them. So a lot of times there's complete scans coming, and some are very detailed scans against the network. So the firewall does block them. We block the entire IP anyway, so we blacklist things. So it's a full-time job to deal with this and to get it's a kind of a steep learning curve as well. So this is our single sign-on system. So we call Realm ID 2.0. So I don't know if you were here last year. 1.0 was terrible. It was really not a packaged product at all. It was custom code. It was slow. It was just a really not something that we like to work with. So that kind of came into our group and the networking team to take on identity management. So IAM or IDM, whatever you want to call it. It's a whole new field of technology that we had to absorb. And we spent about the last 3 years working on it with shibless servers and things like that. A good learning experience, a little frustrating, but anyway, we're really happy with this product. It's a product called Portal Guard. They're in a company in New Hampshire, and it runs on Windows Server. They got really great pricing to all the community colleges in California, and no idea what that is. Am I in the background here? Yeah. Okay. Thanks. So anyway, so you do need to log in here. We just like make our own life a little bit difficult. So first of all, you have your student ID numbers. Some start with a W. Some start with an @ sign. Well, that really wasn't a good idea. However, that got picked to be as the first character. Unix systems go crazy. Most systems go crazy. People go crazy. Anyway, you don't start things with an @ sign. But for our employees, we still use first initial last name. So right away, we're not all quite standardized in terms of what our login ID is. So we had to put the little checkbox up there for faculty and staff. But this is great. So you can now, if you do forget your password, you can go in. You can set your either security questions. You can do a text message. I think you can have an alternate email. So there's kind of 3 recovery methods to recover your password. You can always call the help desk and they can do it for you. So we have the other challenge. Then now we had to scale up our student Active Directory database. We never really had one. There's the Oracle database that manages, through Web 4, and that has 1 million accounts. But we never really had an easy method to deploy a student Active Directory. So now we've had to do that as part of this. So we're up to about 120,000 student accounts in our student Active Directory, and we've managed to, automate a lot of that process. So, but that was another big challenge, and now we're trying to figure out how big is it going to get? How big do we really want it to become? But in any case, so once you log in here, it really is single sign-on, is you now have access to these resources that what we call federated. So, I know that some of the names are a little confusing or don't mean anything. Canvas means nothing unless you're taking an online class. It's now the online learning management system, or even Tech Enhanced. Campus Logic is for financial aid. Starfish, another really bizarre name. But it's going to be used by all the colleges in California for counseling and early alert. So your counselors will be able to set up appointments with you through Starfish, and they now want us to incorporate from the photo ID from your picture. The counselors will have a picture of the student as you walk into the office. I guess they can, helps them, get to know you a little bit. But in any case, there'll be a few more on here. Next year, we're going to be adding Web 4. So, that's the one where you typically log in, where you go to class, do registration for your classes. So that will also be tied into here. And that's the one that's really going to have a big impact, because there's thousands of, how every student logs into Web 4, typically, not the non-credits, but credit. Yes. Yeah, so it's going to require, there's no easy way to do it now, but we have to upgrade to a whole new version of our ERP system. And then that's going to facilitate this a little bit better.
How big is your domain controller have to be for 100,000 accounts?
It's not very big. It's physical boxes. Still, we might have virtualized these, which are VMs. Really not that big. It's just a quick authentication, but it's the size of the database. It takes a while to load. When we want to look up a name, sometimes, it takes 2-3 minutes to load before you can get into the point where you can do a find and look it up. So, but we just don't want it to be 1 million and 1.5 million, right? So anyway, that's kind of the thing that we've been struggling with a little bit. And then all of these single sign-on things. So now the hackers versus the IAM professional, who comes out on top. So again, remember, I just want to be the network manager. But anyway, so now myself and our team, I have a great team. There's about 7 of us right now, full-time. We have an opening, hope to have posted in the next few months for another engineer. So, we've got some of our team just really jumped into this and been putting a lot of time and effort. So anyway, we attend things like this. This one happens to be tomorrow. It's a webcast on this. So we try to stay current as best we can. But, obviously, if somebody steals your identity or your identity credentials and we have the convenience of single sign-on, they've now got credentials for all these systems that you use. So there's upsides and downsides, and this isn't only us that faces this. This is just the trend of technology, and that's sort of the way it's going. It's still better, I guess, than trying to have a lot of different IDs and passwords and things like that. So every organization, though, you pretty much have to have some type of identity management. You don't really want to use Google or Facebook. We looked into that a little bit. There's definitely some disadvantages there. So anyway, we feel we found the right product that can work, and eventually it'll be, a newer version. But we'll be folding in more things. But the thing you're really going to notice, like I said, is the Web 4 next year. This is something else that popped in my email. This is one of the stranger LinkedIn invites from someone. He's the assistant legal attaché, a supervisory special agent in the Ukraine. So I declined I just deleted his message. But, if you kind of, speaking of the Russians, when you walked in about the Russian spies and, anyway, I really haven't met this gentleman, so I have no desire to be his LinkedIn friend. But if I were really fishing and trolling and all of that, I would use his picture. It looks like he really is a Russian spy. I would use, sort of does anyway. I would use. Why not put Judy Castro's picture up there instead? If you really want to, I would probably befriend or be a LinkedIn partner with Judy Castro, especially if she said, I don't know, I just happen to work in San Francisco or something like that. But yeah, to really say you're a special agent in the Ukraine, that doesn't I don't know how many people accepted that one.
That picture looks like almost nothing like you.
Yeah, it's not me. Oh, yeah, that's me up there.
Yeah.
So anyway, I declined him. But we do have friends in high places. And so this is a really great organization. You've probably never heard of REN ISEC, Research, Education, Networking, Information Sharing, and Analysis Center. They are very valid. They are part of the Internet 2 organization, I think, out of University of Indiana. And they do a lot of great stuff. So believe it or not, they are providing a monitoring service across the entire .edu, everyone with the .edu domain, and the address space registered in the .edu domain. And we have quite a few IP addresses, but they look at all kinds of things. And they just sent this out on Monday of something that they found that brought to their attention of basically a credential dump. And it happened to have just, only a single email address. It wasn't like 10,000 or anything like that. One of our students, their email address happened to have been found on Pastebin with the associated password. So, we don't have time to go out and look around at all these different things. But this organization does, and they do that for all the schools around the US. And we used to get them for things like a copyright violation from HBO. And then, months went by, I think a year went by, we didn't get anything. And I had to ask, are you guys still doing that monitoring service? And they go, oh, yes. I said, okay, great. We didn't get anything for a year. We had absolutely no issues, for a year at a time. So we get something like this maybe every few months. This is the first one I recall where it was an email. A lot of times it'll be like malicious activity on this IP address. And I can tell from the range it's in our Wi-Fi space. So there's, again, not much we can do about that. Probably not all that serious. But this was actually something. So what we did is we reset the password for this student and contacted them and sent them to their personal email. And we told them what their new Gmail password is. So this isn't anything through Google. I don't know if, well, actually, these are Gmail accounts, as you know. So I don't know if Google does that. I've heard that Google does a service like that as well for their Gmail accounts. They'll see if they've been exploited or out on any sites like that. But these guys do it. They scan for .edus, and then they look through our IP addresses, and then they send to RSP, and that gets to us. So usually pretty quickly as well. Sometimes there's a delay, a day or two or something like that. But usually they notify us right away when they find something like this, so we can take some action.
Is there a lot of it, or just minute stuff?
Yeah, like I said, it's only been one at a time. It isn't very frequent. I'd say it's pretty minute, and I think they're doing a pretty thorough scanning job as well. So we're kind of happy that there's not a big thing. So if you go into Pastebin and you put in City College or CCSF, you'll get things from years ago that are still out there, and there's not that many things. But yeah, that's how most organizations that do suffer a breach, someone tells them, hey, all of these credentials have been out there for sale in the dark web or something like that. That's how Maricopa Community College, Target, obviously, so that's typically how organizations get informed by the FBI that they find stuff. So I'm not sure if these guys are searching the dark web or just the general internet, but in any case, they do a great job for us. So this was not a good day last week. So normally we have pretty smooth internet traffic. We had three service interruptions. This is on Wednesday a week ago. And so that's really unusual. Normally our goal is 5 nines, of course, but usually we're really good at meeting the 4 nines type requirement, which means you have 8 hours of downtime a year. But even that, we usually exceed it because, maybe something's down in one building, but not nowhere else, or the phone system has a problem, but the internet doesn't. But in this case, the firewall, we have redundant firewalls, and the primary firewall said, hey, I got something weird going on. I'm going to go into a non-functioning state. So it failed over to the other firewall, and pretty soon that one said, hey, I'm also non-functioning. So we had to do some kind of rebooting and try to get them back online. And we thought, all right, it's good. Okay, well, let's go back to what we're doing. And then, nope, it happened again. And then we got it back up. It's like, what the heck is going on? Finally, we got it stabilized. We don't really yet even have a full explanation of what occurred from that particular incident. But, we were able to improve our, troubleshooting procedures a bit. We do have a pretty good support organization that helps us maintain the firewalls, as well as we got Palo Alto Networks on the line as well. But we're still waiting for an explanation. What happened? We had just done a OS upgrade like the week before, and we thought, well, should we go back? Should we go back? And the guy said, well, no, this one's even more stable. We're at like .12 something. He said it's more stable than the .11, so don't go back. So
have you thought of upgrading them one at a time?
Well, we do upgrade them one at a time. Well, you have to, but they're in a high availability pair, so they have to be identical. Yeah, even all the interfaces, like if we use, interface 1 through 8 on this one, has to be interface 1 through 8 on the other. The operating systems have to match, so everything has to be identical. And we just hadn't really encountered that before. And, middle of the day, of course, is a bad time to do it. At least we were somewhat in the vicinity. Middle of the night would have been worse. But this is bad, so we meet every week on Wednesdays, and normally we're sitting down in the basement of Batman Hall. We're there all day. But this day we decided, well, hey, let's go have a staff meeting over in the MUB building, which I guess is over here, right? So we went over here and had our staff meeting in MUB, and then I got a call and we had to rush back over there. Then we got it back up and said, well, let's go back and continue our staff meeting. So we went back to the MUB. Then we got another call. So then we literally had to run back over to Batmail Hall. And finally we said, let's just stay here today. And so we resolved that problem, and we eventually got it stable again. So now we're back to by the end of the day, we were back to our primary and failover.
Do you have like I see it sometimes it's downtime, on the mail or some downtime. Sometimes. Is something more common causing downtime than other things, like usually the firewall or?
Usually like a power outage, is the most common thing. We haven't had too many of those lately, but obviously the power out anywhere in the city, the power goes out in the Mission and that whole site goes down, or we have a power outage here and we lose things. Typically what we have is like a switch will fail, a power supply will fail in a switch, or a card will fail in a switch. So of the 190 switches, some of them have, like this part of this building maybe has 8 or 10 Ethernet switches. So a part of this building would fail if the Ethernet switch went down. So that's the more common outage that we have. This is really unusual to have a firewall. I mean, even to just have one interruption like that was pretty unusual. But to have 3, within, it's kind of started from between 10 and maybe 12:30. So it wasn't quite a 2-hour window, but it's pretty bad.
It's rule-based, so it's curious.
Right. So this wasn't anything to do with the rules or the policies. It wasn't like we'd made a change that caused it. It's just something to do. The system just went into a non-functioning state. I don't know.
It wasn't a flood attack, right, or some sort?
No, we would have, a DDoS attack or something. We would have seen traffic spike up, or the Palo Alto engineers would have found that. The only thing going on, there were solar flares that day, but I don't think that happened. We did have slowdown on the first day classes. It coincided, I think it was the eclipse. I think maybe we'd have been online watching that. We saturated some network links that have never really been saturated. We had twice as much traffic as we did any other day. So we had network slowdown. So that gets that back to your question. That's probably a more common outage situation as a slowdown. So, it could be a lot of things. Sometimes the back-end servers are slow. The database has a problem. This case, that they happen to be the network, but usually it isn't. Usually it's something else. Or a lot of what we get are just individual problems, desktop things. But anyway, so this is our normal traffic as of this Monday. You can see we peak at about 800 megabits per second, maybe close to that 1 gigabit link right there. And then just for reference, I have an older slide here from 2005. So this was a different graphing tool, but our peak back here was maybe about 500 megabits per second. So roughly we've gone, up 30% maybe over the past 2 years, something like that. So it's pretty big growth. We had some spikes here, spiking up that high, but all of these tools, they'll do like a 5-minute average. So, that's typically how the SFlow and these other monitoring tools work. So you can't tell exactly what the spike is, but it hasn't been growing dramatically. I mean, we've seen maybe 20% growth, or 10% growth per year, something like that. So a lot of there are more devices. College is busier now than, the past few years. Enrollment dropped, and actually the past 5 years have been kind of really a little too exciting at City College. We're looking forward to a nice, quiet decade ahead. But yeah, we have a lot more students now, more devices. But also, the application developers have long ago realized, and YouTube is an example, you really want the minimal amount of bandwidth. So like a high def stream from YouTube is quite small in terms of the actual data traffic that's involved. The compression algorithms have gotten really good. And since we've switched to like a mobile world, we're not always on fast Wi-Fi. A lot of times you're on cellular, and so most apps work really well without a huge amount of bandwidth. In fact, there's really not that many that I've found that use much bandwidth. Even video conferencing is hardly anything across an IP network. Voice calls are absolutely nothing. in terms of the amount of data that's involved in traversing the network. So it's only when you really aggregate things together, in this case, you aggregate all of City College together, and then you start to see, maybe a gigabit of traffic. So we're now just starting to upgrade to 10 gigabit in various things, various places, but it's not gigabit Ethernet, by the way. I think is probably one of the most innovative and technologies. It's been out at least 20 years or so, since the late 90s. And, it's used, all systems have a gigabit interface, and there isn't any need for anything else in most servers, or even most Ethernet switches for that matter. So it's got at least another 10 years of, or more. So to have some technology, the foundation of communications, be the very same thing for 30 years is phenomenal, with all the other changes that go on and all the other apps that have been invented. So that's pretty much all I have. Like I said, happy to answer any more.
What's going to be put in the 10 gig?
10 gig, well, we're gradually doing it over the next few weeks. We'll put in just kind of select links within the data center. And so the other good thing you can do with gigabit Ethernet, you can just trunk them together. So 1 gig, you put another cable, make it 2 gig, another cable, make it 3 gig. And you just change things, and now you spend $5 instead of, 50,000. Yes?
I was curious if for facilities you would have higher or lower traffic, for instance.
Facilities meaning?
Like, how does this campus compare to John?
Well, this campus is by far the biggest. And but yeah, we can look at the others, and they're probably well under. The aggregate traffic is under 100 megabits per second peak. For the downtown or Chinatown or John Adams campus. So where we have probably this campus probably has 4,000 computers on it plus all the Wi-Fi. Over there, they'll have I think Mission Campus might have close to 1,000 computers, but that's one of the busiest ones. Probably more like 500 to 1,000. So it's much smaller at the centers. So, yes.
Who comes up with the basically the firewall policy of what you guys allow and don't allow?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have a IT advisory committee composed of it's a formal committee on the campus composed of faculty and administrators and staff. So anything that's a really pure policy level, we kind of decide there, and then like the computer use policy gets approved by the board of trustees, but that's going to be very general type things. But we have to have latitude to kind of make decisions. So we have what we call kind of an acceptable use or guidelines that we follow on our team. But yeah, it's a good question. Like if you do a block like a external bad guy, I mean preventing a particular IP address or organization from viewing a website. So that's something we don't take lightly, but a couple hundred out of billions. So otherwise, we do have to control peer-to-peer traffic. So that's the one thing I'm pretty much aware of from the Higher Ed Act, I think of 2008. If your college wants to be eligible for federal financial aid, which of course you do, they put into some congressional bill or whatever it was that you have to block peer-to-peer traffic or control peer-to-peer. So that's the one that I'm only one I'm aware of. So we limit it down to the point where it can't actually function. So that's the only one I'm really aware of. Otherwise, it's just we have an asset, like we'll want to put a new server up in the DMZ, and we got to figure, okay, well, what's it doing? So we'll allow only the ports that it needs to function.
That reminds me, the firewall rule. 4 times you guys have blocked my servers, but every time it's been such a weak block, it was trivial to hack past, so I didn't bother to ask them to open it up again.
Huh.
But
we're blocking your SAM's class?
They blocked that twice, like 3 years ago, and this last semester they blocked my attack server because I was demonstrating an attack, and they thought the instructions were the attack. So I just moved it to HTTPS, and you can't see it anymore.
Okay.
So the fact that we don't man in the middle of the HTTPS here,
right,
which means you can really move anything in and out of campus.
Yeah, we would like to do that. That's kind of on our list of things to do. But it probably wasn't so much us. It's like the firewall is doing its thing. Yeah. So we do want to just kind of err on the side of caution. So if the firewall, controls are blocking something inadvertently, we're happy to research it and enable it. But it's a whole it's thing because for a while things were a little too strict. When you first turn up a kind of a next generation firewall like that, you're not just controlling ports and IPs, you're controlling applications, and it can be tricky. You can get it wrong, and it's way too strict. And just things too you don't understand. Like something was viewed as a threat. It was a service message block. I said, oh, that's terrible. I got to block that. Well, that's a totally normal data transaction between Microsoft, Windows servers or something like that. And even Apple Updates, our Apple Update server uses SMB. And so anyway, that was inadvertently viewed as a threat by the firewall. I said, boy, that's terrible. Let's stop it right now. And it's like, oops, somebody called, hey, you knocked me offline. Yeah. So it's kind of hit or miss there. But again, that's a really good question. I understand like at the city and county of San Francisco, it's much more strict in terms of the procedures they have to follow in order to determine how they control traffic or what they don't. But we'll sometimes come in and we'll see, a lot of malware on a particular node, and we'll just take that node right off the network and say, we'll leave a voice message or something. We had to take your computer off the network. You got to call ITS, and we'll send someone out there to scrub it before we bring it back online. And we have the latitude to do that. So it's not very often that we do that, but we told, just err on the side of caution. And, so it could come to a head someday where we knock somebody offline right before something really important that they're working on. But, it's only really kind of exceptional situations. Every few months, I've encountered something like that. So, yes.
So what type of firewall are you using, and what was your choice?
Yeah, so we use Palo Alto Networks, and so they're what's called next generation firewall. So we had Checkpoint. When I started, we somehow had Checkpoint as the firewall, and we were pretty happy with it. We stayed with it, but then probably 7 or 8 years ago, we wanted to, we became much more security became much more involved around the application layer and not just blocking ports. So we evaluated Palo Alto, and we had both running for a period of time. We had a Checkpoint running in a high failover capability, and then we had behind the Checkpoint we had a Palo Alto. And so, it wasn't fully redundant, but very rarely were we in that situation. So anyway, we ran both of them for 3 or 4 years, and then we just got to the point we had to decide. And so we just kind of made it our decision internally, talked with our, consulting company that assists us, and we just felt that Palo Alto had a lot of momentum in the industry. But, they really compete very closely. So if Palo Alto comes out with a feature, Checkpoint has it, and vice versa. So I think those are kind of the two leading things. FireEye may have valid product. Cisco seems to be a little further behind with firewall products. So I'd say either Checkpoint or Palo Alto is going to be sufficient to meet our needs. And we just went with Palo Alto.
Is there one that is easier to troubleshoot?
Easier to maintain? Probably not. The thing that's happened is, they've gone from being like on proprietary hardware to, hey, we run an open source, and then back to more proprietary hardware. So the performance is better if you're on their proprietary hardware. So we happen to have Checkpoint just running on open standard hardware. So that was kind of a difference right there. But I would say there really isn't that big of a difference. There's a bit of a learning curve whenever you're managing it. But the main thing is if you're a firewall administrator, you'll pick up one or the other, fairly quickly. But to get to that point, it's really hard. I think you have to approach firewall management as being a network engineer, and then you can become a firewall administrator, or you can maybe jump in and do it right away. But we had the people on our team try to switch from like more of a programming background into firewall, and it was too much of a learning curve. It wasn't the same technology.
Just curious, in terms of physical virtual platforms, are you running Blades servers?
Yeah, we have some Blade servers. We have a big HP chassis with 16 blades in it. And now we got a great donation from Google. So Google donated about 40 of these really big Dell servers. They're bright yellow. They got Google logos all over them, but they work great. And they're pretty expensive. They're probably like at least 5 to 10K each if we were to buy them. So we put some of those in a cluster, and now we run VMs on that. So Google literally donated, a couple $100,000 worth of equipment to us. So we take advantage of that, and seems to work fine. The blades are okay too. The chassis is a little bit, difficult sometimes, but so we kind of have both in that regard.
How much does it cost to have Palo Alto, can you say?
Sure. So it's so we went with the 10 gig capable systems. Model 5050, and they I forgot exactly how much it cost, but let's just say they cost like I think around $30,000 each one, and they're in an HA pair. So then though you get these subscriptions. So you get a URL subscription, a threat subscription. Then you also pay ongoing support, maintenance. So we pay it's close to another 50,000 every year just in licenses for it.
60 grand up front plus 50 grand a year.
Something like that.
Yeah, that's what.
I'd say it's about that. And then we have a outside entity that kind of does 24-hour management for us. So they do a great job. And that's, some other like 30, 40,000 a year that we pay for them for 24/7 firewall support, which is a pretty good deal. We're not staffed for 24/7 or anything. So yeah, they're not, but you really have to look at the big picture. You have to look at the cost of ownership over like a 5-year period. So the hardware is pretty good. You can upgrade it. So we'll probably get 5 years of life out of that. But like I said, every year, and I'm sure the companies realize that too, just selling hardware is pretty thin margins. But, by selling subscription-based services is where they can make their money. Palo Alto's doing well. They went public some time ago. So they seem to be, the people we work with there are really good. We've had great support, engineers on the line from Amsterdam and engineers from all over the world that wherever their call center happens to be that help us out sometimes. I think they're a pretty good company. Like I said, Checkpoint is as well.
Do we have network security monitoring like Splunk or something?
We're not using Splunk. We use an Alien Vault.
Okay.
It's kind of a SEIM type environment. But it's we have access to we could potentially get access to Splunk now through the state. So we'll do that. We just we need a little more. Probably need a new staff member to join the team before we can take that on. I don't think it's going to be something. None of this stuff is really set it and forget it. It's all like constant management, constant updates, constant effort to keep it all running. Even the phone system, 2,000 telephones. You don't just turn it up and walk away. We're constantly moving them around, and it's pretty low. We have to the tricky thing is you have to guess ahead of time how many man hours or staff time is it going to take to manage it. And for the phone system, it's at least one full-time position to keep the phone system running. Same with Wi-Fi. It's a full-time position. Identity management's full-time. Firewall's full-time. So pretty soon, you got 7, 8 people fully engaged in maintaining it. And now as things age too, so our Ethernet switches are getting old. We get great service and support, but they're failing. It can fail. They fail a little more frequently now. So we have to just be ready to jump out there with our spare parts and spare chassis and everything else to get out and take care of it. So, and the facilities around City College are relatively old, as you probably noticed in a lot of places. So we have leaky roofs and things like that. It just happened to drip right on our switches, and so we have stuff like that we have to try to deal with. But otherwise, we got brand new buildings. Chinatown's a great building. MEB, the brand new building. I think this building's great too. Really built well. So yeah.
You guys recently installed fiber optics how recently?
Well, the city ring went in around 12 or 13 years ago.
Do you anticipate CCSF having any problems with that? Are you guys going to have to hire a new position to control that?
Not really. It's managed. It's put in by the city and county. So once you put it in the ground, we have a private right to use agreement with them. So fiber is great. There really isn't much. Although the city does have a big team of outside plant engineers. They have these huge trucks with their splicing equipment. So the city and county definitely has a team of people they call outside plant engineers. So they have their hands full, to try to keep all that working and keep that maintained. But for us, we just have to do it here. We have a cabling vendor that'll come in once in a while when we have some, cabling projects and things like that. But yeah, we do have to manage the infrastructure, and it isn't, fiber is great. I mean, you put it in, it stays there. So it isn't a lot of ongoing effort that you have to deal with for that. Right. Okay. Well, anyway, glad to help out. It's always good to come and talk with you guys. So.
There's an attendance sheet there. It's worth extra credit if you put your name on that.
So up here at the classrooms, like RX is still 100 megs. So Barry had to switch what we did, but trying to get some.
Which room?
RX 183.
All right, and I'll put these slides on my website. I'm gonna stop this stream. I'm just gonna help people in the lab.
Yeah, they should all be.
All right. You folks on the stream should email where the homework goes, cnet.123@gmail to get credit for attending this. All right. And I'm going to stop it.